Tonight, GM says it was incompetence, not a cover-up. The automaker rolls out its investigation of the ignition switch scandal. 15 employees are fired, but upper management is spared, drawing the ire of a Senate critic.
This report disclaims all corporate responsibility.
Jeff Glor has the story. The Obama administration now says a Taliban death threat is one reason it kept Congress in the dark about the prisoner swap. Reports from Bill Plant, David Martin, and Holly Williams. Hillary Clinton reveals how bitter rivals became teammates after a secret meeting in a Washington, D.C. house. Nancy Cordes has details of Clinton's new book. And Mark Phillips with Leslie Cruz returning to Normandy for one final mission.
This is the CBS Evening News with Scott Pelley.
Good evening. Scott is off tonight. I'm Maurice Dubois. General Motors today put out the results of its internal investigation into the ignition switch defect linked to at least 13 deaths and why it took a decade to issue a recall. The report blames a failure to share information and take action, but says there was no cover-up. CEO Mary Barra will keep her job, but 15 other GM employees have been fired and 5 others disciplined. GM said it will set up a compensation fund for crash victims, and it pledged to make institutional changes in the corporation. Jeff Glor has our reports.
Let me be clear. This should have never happened. It is unacceptable.
In a speech streamed to GM employees around the world, CEO Mary Barra said today there was no conspiracy, just incompetence and neglect.
This report is extremely thorough, brutally tough, and deeply troubling.
The investigation, conducted by an attorney who does have a long relationship with GM, found the company discovered there were problems with ignition switches as early as 1999. Documents show engineers refer to it as the switch from hell, which caused cars to inadvertently shut off. The defective switches still went into 6 models, including the Saturn Ion and later the Chevy Cobalt. The first deaths linked to Ions happened in 2003 and 2004. In 2005, the first Cobalt death. As employees search for answers, the report says the engineers made a basic mistake. They did not know how their own vehicles had been designed. That meant they didn't realize the airbags would not deploy when the switch failed. The report talks frequently of the GM nod. When a meeting is held to discuss a problem, a solution is agreed upon, and then no one does anything. It found no evidence that Mary Barra knew about faulty switches.
This is a test of our character and our values. And in the end, I'm not afraid of the truth, and I know you aren't either. I want it known that we will face up to our mistakes and we will take them head on.
This internal investigation, however, is not satisfying some critics. Senator Richard Blumenthal.
This report is the best that money can buy. It is far from independent and emphasizes now how crucial a truly independent, objective report and investigation is by the Department of Justice, by Congress, and further action by federal watchdogs.
There will be a new round of congressional hearings later this month. A criminal probe continues. Ken Feinberg says his compensation plan for victims' families will be out by August 1st. Maurice?
Jeff Glor in Detroit tonight. In Brussels today, President Obama had to answer more questions about the controversy that's followed him to Europe, his decision to release 5 high-level members of the Taliban in exchange for U.S. Army Sergeant Bo Bergdahl. We have reports tonight from Bill Plant in Paris, David Martin at the Pentagon, and Holly Williams in Qatar. First, Bill Plant with the President. Bill?
Maurice, earlier today in Brussels, the president doubled down in defense of his decision to swap Taliban prisoners for Sergeant Bo Bergdahl without telling Congress.
We had a prisoner of war whose health had deteriorated, and we were deeply concerned about it, and we saw an opportunity, and we seized it, and I make no apologies for that.
Bergdahl's health was the administration's initial reason for expediting the mission and not telling Congress. But when angry senators were briefed yesterday, they were also told that the White House had to move quickly because of death threats from the Taliban if word of the deal got out.
because of the nature of the folks that we were dealing with and the fragile nature of these negotiations, we felt it was important to go ahead and do what we did.
Mr. Obama also defended himself against criticism for bringing Bergdahl's parents to the Rose Garden to celebrate his release.
I make absolutely no apologies for making sure that we get back a young man to his parents, and that the American people understand that this is somebody's child.
The White House said again today that it would make the prisoner swap in a heartbeat. And Maurice, as of earlier today, Bergdahl had still not spoken to his parents.
Bill Plant with the president in Paris tonight. Now to David Martin at the Pentagon with more tonight about the investigation of Bergdahl's disappearance and his 5 years in captivity. David?
While Bergdahl was still in prison, the U.S. knew he had tried to escape twice, and that after each try, his captors had increased security around him. Now, Defense Department officials debriefing him in Germany are finding out the conditions were harsher than they thought. Although he was able to walk under his own power on the day of his release, a medical analysis of a proof-of-life video the U.S. received in January found that Bergdahl spoke with a stutter, cradled an arm as if it were injured, and had lost weight. Overall, medical experts assessed him as being in declining health, a far cry from the young man who had been considered a good soldier by both his buddies and his superiors up until the day of his disappearance in 2009. The officer who investigated Bergdahl's disappearance interviewed many of the same soldiers who are now calling him a deserter. They described him as always on time, dressed in proper uniform, and courteous. A little quirky, but not freaky. Although Bergdahl had sneaked off the outpost once before, his superiors never found out, and his buddies thought it was neat he had gotten away with it. The investigating officer could not reach any definite conclusions about what Bergdahl was thinking when he disappeared for good, but he speculated that the good soldier was simply bored with the routine of standing guard. The investigating officer also found evidence of a poorly run unit, for instance, inconsistent accounting for sensitive equipment such as night vision goggles. He also found gaps in the perimeter set up to guard the outpost, gaps which Bergdahl took advantage of on the night of his disappearance. As part of the homecoming process, Bergdahl would have been assigned a legal counsel to protect him from incriminating himself while he's undergoing debriefing. Maurice?
David Martin at the Pentagon. Now about the men on the other side of the prisoner swap, the 5 Taliban members sent from Guantanamo Bay to Qatar. And Holly Williams is there.
This Taliban propaganda video claims to show the 5 men celebrating their freedom shortly after arriving in Qatar. They haven't been seen in public here since. They're not allowed to leave Qatar for 12 months, but when the year is up, they'll be free to go wherever they choose. Their temporary home is the wealthiest country in the world, a tiny Arabian state smaller than Connecticut that uses its oil riches to gain influence in the Middle East.
Qatar has the best relationship with the United States. It's our main ally.
Abdullah Al-Asbar edits a newspaper here owned by a member of Qatar's royal family. How will they be treated?
They will be under our security radar here in government, but at the same time they will have their freedom to move, to go to malls. If they want to go to movies to watch a movie, they have the right to do that.
But others in Qatar won't be so welcoming, including restaurant owner Ramat-Ullah Jalili. He told us he fled Afghanistan in 2008 because it was no longer safe for his family.
So these 5 men were Taliban leaders. Now they've been let out of prison.
Yeah.
Do you think it's a good thing?
No.
Why not?
If a person do any bad thing, they should punish.
Holly Williams joins us tonight from Doha. And Holly, a lot of people are wondering, why is Qatar, of all countries, getting involved in diplomacy?
Well, Maurice, part of Qatar's strategy for building its influence in this part of the world has been to play the peacemaker, to play the mediator. So back in 2012, Qatar allowed the Taliban to open an office here, And then in brokering this prisoner swap, Qatar has affirmed its position as a key U.S. ally here in the Middle East.
Building its profile. Holly Williams, thank you very much tonight. Now back here stateside, few political rivalries were as fierce as the one between Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton. Now Clinton reveals how they made up over wine at the Washington home of Senator Dianne Feinstein. The story is in Clinton's new book. It's published by Simon & Schuster, a division of CBS, and it's due out next week. CBS This Morning bought a copy at a bookstore. More now from Nancy Cordes.
Hard Choices opens at a secret meeting in 2008 between Hillary Clinton and then-Senator Barack Obama, who had just defeated her in the presidential primaries. We stared at each other like two teenagers on an awkward first date, taking a few sips of Chardonnay, Clinton wrote. Both Barack and I and our staffs had long lists of grievances. It was time to clear the air. The meeting went well, and most of Clinton's 600-page book examines the foreign challenges she tackled after President Obama made her Secretary of State.
So help me God.
So help me God.
In the book, written long before last weekend's prisoner swap involving Sergeant Bo Bergdahl, Clinton correctly predicted that opening the door to negotiations with the Taliban would be hard to swallow for many Americans after so many years of war. She also detailed for the first time a high-stakes disagreement with the president over Syria. Clinton said she tried to convince him to vet, train, and equip moderate opposition fighters. But Mr. Obama, she wrote, worried that arming the rebels was not likely to be enough to drive Syrian President Bashar Assad from power. There are some lighter moments in the book. Clinton described greeting the French president and losing her shoe, and revealed her tricks to stay awake on those record-breaking round-the-world trips. I sometimes dug the fingernails of one hand into the palm of the other. It was the only way I knew to cope with the crazy schedule and fierce jet lag.
The one thing Clinton does not talk about in the book is her political future. On that front, Maurice, all she will say all the way on page 595 is, will I run for president in 2016? The answer is, I haven't decided yet. Okay. Nancy Cordes, thank you so much. And Nancy, of course, will have more about Hillary Clinton's book first thing tomorrow morning on CBS This Morning. There has been a shooting on the campus of Seattle Pacific University. Police say one person has died and at least 3 others have been shot. Conditions of the other victims range from life-threatening to stable. The gunman is in custody. Seattle Pacific posted on its website that the campus was put on lockdown. A public figure comes forward about her personal battle with Alzheimer's disease. 3 police officers are dead in one of the worst shootings ever in Canada. And 70 years after D-Day, Jim Martin returns to Normandy, where the CBS Evening News continues. More than 5 million Americans have Alzheimer's disease. There's no cure, and many patients suffer in silence. Now, a public figure has revealed to us that she is one of them. B. Smith, the restaurant owner, designer, and decorator. She's 64, and she talked to Dr. John LaPook for the CBS News broadcast Sunday morning.
What is the name of the disease you have?
Alzheimer's.
And what did it mean to you?
It meant something bad, really bad.
Barbara Smith was one of the first African-American models on the cover of Mademoiselle. In 1986, she opened her first B. Smith restaurant in New York City, and 2 more followed. She hosted a TV program, wrote books, and was called the Black Martha Stewart.
You do try to hide it from everybody.
Around 4 years ago, Bea told her doctor about her symptoms before she told her husband and business partner of 22 years, Dan Gasby. Those problems, such as repeating things or not answering a question, became very serious.
Do you know the date today? Do you know the month? How about the year? And what does that feel like?
Things like that make me very sad.
Eventually, she saw a team of experts at Mount Sinai Hospital in New York, including neurologist Dr. Martin Goldstein.
There seems to be a greater degree of atrophy, shrinkage of the hippocampus here.
Last October, a special scan was done to look for amyloid, a sticky protein that damages nerves and is present in patients with Alzheimer's.
So there's a ton of it here.
Correct. It's everywhere.
Though symptoms have progressed, B. Smith continues to have the same positive outlook that helped make her famous.
I think the future is going to be fine. I'm going to do my best to make it work out for me and for as many people that I can possibly help too. Cheers.
To good and tough times.
Yes.
Illness, especially one as cruel as Alzheimer's, can tear families apart. But B and Dan say it has brought them closer than they've ever been. Maurice, they're in this battle together.
It is heartbreaking, John. Thank you so much. And you can see more of John's interview with B. Smith on the June 15th edition of CBS's Sunday Morning. And the love affair between Ronald and Nancy Reagan did not end when he died of Alzheimer's 10 years ago today. The former First Lady, now 92 years old, visited the grave of America's 40th president today, as she does every year on the anniversary of his death. Reagan is buried at his presidential library in Simi Valley, California. And we'll be right back. The Marine Corps is investigating a jet crash in Southern California. The Harrier exploded in flames on impact last evening, destroying 2 homes and severely damaging a third 90 miles east of San Diego. No one on the ground was hurt. The pilot ejected safely. Police in eastern Canada are hunting for a suspected cop killer. One family watched the entire attack unfold.
Oh my God, I didn't know a gun was like that. Go down.
He shot him.
Oh.
3 officers were killed, 2 others wounded. Hundreds of police have flooded the streets of Moncton, New Brunswick, searching for Justin Bork. Police have no motive for the shootings. Bork is 24 and he has no criminal record. On Monday, we introduced you to Jim Martin of Xenia, Ohio, known as Pee-wee. 70 years ago this week, he parachuted into Normandy with the 101st Airborne Division. Today, he performs an encore. Martin, now 93, joined daredevils from all over the world today to commemorate the D-Day anniversary. He landed on the same patch of land as he did 70 years ago, just behind Utah Beach.
It's a good jump.
Yeah. Martin told us riding in the plane is boring. When you get off the plane, he said, it gets exciting.
A little bit of ego, because I'm 93 and I can still do it. And also I just wanted to show all the people that you don't have to sit and die just because you get old. Keep doing things.
You bet. Well, another D-Day veteran returned to Normandy this week to complete a mission. That story is next.
This portion of the CBS Evening News is sponsored by the Microsoft Cloud, providing flexible enterprise cloud solutions for business.
Tomorrow is the 70th anniversary of D-Day. For the remaining survivors of the invasion, some now in their 90s, this has been a week for one final reunion. And for the veteran Mark Phillips, met in Normandy, one final mission.
General area where I was. 2 old war horses got back together for this commemoration, and there's never been a D-Day reunion like it. Leslie Cruz, now 90, who jumped with the 82nd Airborne behind enemy lines the night before the invasion. And Whiskey 7, the airplane he jumped from.
There we go. On the ground. Wow.
Both are back in Normandy, both with unfinished stories.
Do you still see it as a drop zone from 70 years ago?
Well, sometimes, yes. Leslie Cruz has returned before to the D-Day drop zones around St. Mary Église, where he landed 70 years ago, but it's taken him this long to finally confront a ghost from his past.
Next thing you know, there's guys plop, 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 this side, that side, all around me.
The ghost of Richard Vargas, a fellow paratrooper who was killed by an artillery shell as they both took cover during a German barrage.
His body was right next to me, body to body. His head was right about here, his helmet against me, and the shell landed right beside him. And just tore him apart on his right leg.
Yeah.
And I always figured that was for me.
At the family's request, Richard Vargas was buried not in Normandy, but in another American war cemetery in eastern France, next to his brother, also a casualty. It took Leslie Cruz this long to find the grave.
This day is a day of remembrance of something that happened 70 years ago on June 7th. Perhaps now I can set it aside and go on without it, but I doubt it.
Whiskey 7, it turns out, is a tough old bird, too. She's been refitted in her D-Day livery and flown back here from a New York State museum. And once again, she's dropping jumpers over Normandy.
Well, that's the plane, huh? That same plane. It's hard to believe.
History come full circle and finally put to rest.
Just a somewhat closure.
To make you feel a little better, finally, to close the chapter on that.
Yeah. Sure.
Another mission to Normandy, for both of them, finally accomplished. Mark Phillips, CBS News, St. Mary Glees, Normandy.
And that is the CBS Evening News for tonight. For Scott Pelley, I'm Maurice Dubois. Thanks for joining us. Have a good night.